Welcome to the Restoration Road. I'm Mitch, and today with me is my former boxing coach for a few weeks, the great Ed Placencia. Ed, how are you?
I'm great.
Yes, you are. You grew up in a big family, and why did you start boxing?
Well, having 6 brothers and 6 sisters, there wasn't a day go by that there wasn't some kind of argument or fight. And then when Dad got home at night, Mom's pointed out which ones were guilty, and there was another fight. I never won one. I never won one. And so when my brother joined this boxing club, the DeKalb County Boxing Club, and told us, you get to fight, and they give you trophies if you win. I thought I'd gone to heaven. So that was just part of our life then.
And you win 4 Golden Gloves.
4 Golden Glove titles, AAU title, then 3 Army titles.
And your brother Arnie tells me that you were going to win the 66 Pan Am Games. They knew the competition. They knew you'd beat them. And you would go to the 68 Olympics. But you felt a calling, and it involved the word sacrifice, I think.
I believed I owed a debt to this country. I can remember growing up hearing every day, this is the greatest country in the world. You can become anything you want to be. So when I got out of high school, I thought, I owe somebody something. Who do I pay? And the only way I could figure it out was go into the military. And so I did go in, and they put me on the boxing team. And I didn't feel like I was doing my part to contribute anything to our country. So that's why I volunteered for Vietnam. Big mistake.
Well, you end up going to Germany first, is that right?
In their infinite wisdom, I volunteered for Vietnam, and they said, okay, you're going to Germany. And that's where everybody's dream tour was. They wanted to get there, and not Vietnam, not Southeast Asia. And after I was there, the day I got there, I put in a 1049, a request to go to Vietnam. It took me 11 months before they honored my request and did send me.
Well, lead us up to the events of the Battle of, is it Hill 875, Dak To?
Dak To, Hill 875, yes.
The 3rd bloodiest battle in the history of the Vietnam War. As
far as American lives lost, yes. I was in the 173rd Airborne, and that's the unit that I wanted to be with. They were General Westmoreland's specific...
A special project, right?
Project, where they could move us any place in the country whenever they wanted to. And they always volunteered us for the things that no one else wanted to do. But yeah, that's how we started. Going up for Hill 875 in those 3 days that we finally did get there, we had over 260 men killed. Out of the 800 that went up with our battalion, reinforced battalion, there were only 11 guys that come out of there without either being killed or wounded. In those 3 days, I got shot 6 times. And they don't just take you out to your target area. They take you 5 miles away, drop you where you know you're secure, drop you off, and then you start marching through the jungle. And I've never seen a movie, I've never seen anything could ever depict what a jungle is, how thick it is, how hard it was to traverse up and down hills. I saw the movie Platoon when I got back. First time I walked out, I couldn't stay. Too many things were happening that actually happened to me in that movie. And I can remember trying to get up hills. It was impossible.
Didn't you have 7 days?
We had to carry 7 or 8 days of rations on our back. Our ammunition, our water, our clothing, our extra mines, anything that we had. My pack, at that time I was weighing probably 118 pounds, and I had a 100-pound rucksack on my back. Closest I ever came to wanting to quit anything is marching through a jungle with this on and trying to fight your way through. When you travel through the jungle, you're 2 columns apart, 10 meters apart, 5 meters between men. So you strung out a long, long ways. And all the way on the way up there, the first night, first time out, They brought in a dog for our guide to get us through there. And that dog led us dead into an ambush, never alerted. The weather, as they found out later with the humidity and everything, they couldn't smell the Vietnamese soldiers. And so he walked us right into an ambush. They waited till we got in about 10, 15 feet before they opened up. And when they did, it was like you couldn't see where they were coming from. The jungle was so dense.
The enemy?
The enemy. They started firing on us. We dropped and trying to fire back, trying to get some cover. But you couldn't see anything. The first, I remember one of the guys in my squad, right in front of me, he got hit and dropped, got hit in the hip, and I ran up and grabbed his leg and started dragging him back. And he kept telling me, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." I said, "I'm not going to leave you. You're going to stay with me. Just keep coming back." And pulling him back, and all of a sudden there was an explosion, and I thought I got shot in the eye. I mean, everything just went blank, and I can remember thinking, grabbing my face and thinking that I got hit in the eye. Well, actually what it was is a piece of shrapnel that had exploded, and it was just a sliver, went across my eyelid, and the burn is what actually I was feeling. We got out of there, we finally pulled back far enough, and as we looked around then, there wasn't a square inch that didn't have a hole in it. The leaves, the trees, the ground, and out of that we had one guy killed and I think 5 wounded. And how we made it out of there, I don't know. I mean, it seemed impossible. So after we pulled back, we called in an airstrike, and they come in with the bombers and just bombed the area. After the bombers were through, away we went again. And at this point in time, I have the point squad and the point platoon and the point company, so we're out front. First night, we dug in 3 men to a foxhole. Dug a perimeter around where, like the old circle of wagon trains, so all the enemies on the outside, all the friendlies are inside. And we dug in foxholes, and they had switched me over to another squad because they're the ones that had lost the men the day before. And so I was in the foxhole with these 2 guys, and rule was you always were attacked, not always, but normally attacked last thing in the evening, just before dark, or first thing in the morning, just before that sun rose. And so I always wanted to be on guard those times of the day and night. I got in the foxhole, and I had first watch. And I knew something was going to happen. I did. I knew something was going to happen. I could just feel it. And as I anticipated, I could see, I could hear it, and my mind was working way overtime, and I kept trying to settle myself down. But I knew something was wrong. And in my watch, my 2 hours, boom, it seemed like 10 minutes, and it was time to wake the next guy up. But I was alert, I was awake, and I knew I couldn't sleep. I stayed the next watch. Same thing, it went through so quickly, and I'm hearing things, and I'm seeing things, and I'm imagining all this going on out there. And same thing, it was time for the next guard to wake up, and I thought, even if I couldn't sleep, I had to rest. So I woke the next guy up, lay down in the bottom of the foxhole, closed my eyes, just laid down. I heard somebody say, "Ed." And I kind of half got up, and I said, "What?" And the guy that's on guard said, "What, Sarge?" I said, "Did you call my name?" He said, "No." I said, "Did somebody call my name?" "No." Okay. I laid back down, closed my eyes, "Ed." And once again, I get up and said, before I even asked, he said, "Sarge, I didn't say anything." I said, "Okay." And I thought, "Ed, you're losing it. Settle down, settle down." And closed my eyes again. Once again, this voice says, "Ed." And I ignored it. I said, "No way, this isn't happening. I'm not hearing anything. Go to sleep." This voice says, "Ed, get out of the foxhole." And I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. Get out of the foxhole. I said, there's just no way. I laid back down. Third time, this voice said to me very emphatically, Ed, get out of the foxhole now. I got up, walked out of the foxhole 10, 15, 20 feet, laid down on the ground, put my helmet under my head, and closed my eyes. 5 minutes later, a Vietnamese or two Vietnamese soldiers snuck up and dropped 3 grenades into that foxhole. You know,
And
if I...
everybody died.
Everybody died, yeah. And I know if I'd have told these guys, we got to get out of here, they'd have laughed at me, you know. And I think about that every day. But how this happened, you know, it made me maybe become a little more aware that there was somebody there with me.
You're interpreting that, even at that time, as this could be the voice of God.
No, I didn't think that, but I knew that there was something. I didn't know. I honestly hadn't figured it out, didn't have a clue.
Okay.
Made it through that night, went on, finally got to our destination. The night before, we loggered in again, and that next morning we got up in our chapel, and Father Waters, he was a Catholic priest, he was my chaplain, and he said he was going to set up a makeshift altar, and anybody that wanted to receive communion could. I was born and raised in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic faith, but I had not been in the Catholic Church in 4 or 5 years. I started having questions about some of the things that were being taught, and instead of trying to find answers, I turned away from it, turned away from church altogether. But when Father Waters made this offer, I thought, this might be a good time to receive communion. And I can remember 2 guys that were standing there, and the one said to the other, man, are you going to receive communion? And the other guy says, hey, man, I ain't a Catholic. He says, I don't think the Padre will care. He says, well, do you think it'll help? He says, man, it can't hurt. and so Father Waters, our chaplain, he was with us then as we started up that hill. And I wouldn't exaggerate a little bit to say that I saw this man get shot 20, 30 times. I saw him get shot in the shoulder, the back of his part of his jersey come off, his boots, his pants, but never any blood. Never any blood, and I couldn't figure out how can this be? You know, he did nothing but help. Brought guys in, administered last rites, encouraged us to stop and talk to us. And you know, being not the smartest guy in the world, I figured this has to be an angel. God has sent an angel to be with us, to get us through this. I found out later he had brothers and sisters. He was from New Jersey. They wrote a book about him, and they were trying to get people that had met him, had known him during the war, to put data into this book. Well, it had been written 10 years after I found out about it, so there's a lot I could have told him, but this is the kind of guy he was. So after we start up the hill, then we finally take off, and they had rotated me, so now I'm the last squad, the last company, the last platoon in our unit, and I'm rear security. And as everybody took off up the hill, we hadn't even moved when they ran into an ambush. And that lead unit was hit by a regiment of NVA.
Is this Hill 875?
Hill 875. We'd finally got to the base of that, and that's where they were headed, up the hill. 2,000 men in a regiment. And as we got stretched out, they hit us with another regiment in the middle. 2,000 men. Coming up behind us, another regiment had been trailing us. Another 2,000 men. We had 800 guys. And my job was rear security. My platoon sergeant left me and said, put the guys, form a perimeter, and stay here till I call you in. Well, time they got hit up front, then we were getting hit in the rear, and we were under tremendous, tremendous fire. And I kept calling my platoon sergeant, we're under heavy fire, we can't stay here much longer, can we come in? Called him half a dozen times, no answer. Finally, I reasoned, what if this guy's dead? What if we're supposed to come in? But I didn't want to leave our rear end exposed, so I got one of my fire team leaders, put him in charge, said, listen, I'll be right back. I got to find out what's going on. And he looked at me, and I could read his eyes. I knew exactly what he's thinking. You're saving your own butt. You're going to get out of here. Just, you're going to save yourself. And I told him, listen, I promise you, I'll be back for you. He's the last thing I heard him say, Sarge, don't take long. We can't stay here much longer. I went up the hills. All I knew was follow the sound. And finally came up across the second lieutenant who, as I found out later, was a forward observer for the artillery. I asked him what was going on. He said, haven't you heard? We're supposed to pull in. We're supposed to form a perimeter. I said, okay. Turned around to go back down the hill.
A perimeter means you're going to have a circle within the surrounding enemy circle.
So all because we know they're all around us, so we got to know where we are. We have to know where the friendlies are, who's in front of us, then has to be an enemy. And so I started back down the hill after my squad, and this lieutenant yelled at me, Sarge, where are you going? I said, well, my squad's still down there. I got to go get him. He said, no, our orders are to pull in with what we've got, form a perimeter. I said, sir, I can't leave my men down there. I promised him I'd come and get them. It started down. He said, Sarge, if you take another step, I'll have you court-martialed. I stopped and turned and said, sir, if you think we're going to get out of this, you do whatever you need to do. I got to go. I took off down the hill, and he yelled at me, I'll give you 10 minutes, and we're pulling out. So I'm going down as fast as I can, and finally, dead in front, as close as you all are to me, right here. All of a sudden, in front of me is 20, 30 Vietnamese soldiers. And here I am facing them, just like you all are right here. And I just stopped. And it's like they didn't know I had this invisible cloak, and they couldn't see me. I swear, they were looking for a target. And there I stood in front of them.
In 2 Kings 6, it talks about Elisha praying that the enemy will be blinded and they can walk like right through him. And you think about if God can do that thousands of years ago, why can't he do it now?
Well, Elijah and I'll have something to talk about. Finally got down to where my guys were and told them, we got to go, guys, come on. Went to each position. We got to go, we got to go. Finally got to my last spot, my machine gunner, Carlos Lozada, PFC from Brooklyn, New York, Puerto Rican kid. My machine gunner, and boy, that machine gun was talking. And I told him, man, we got to go, we got to get out of here. He said, Sarge, we can't all go, or none of us are going to make it. And he was absolutely right. If he'd have stopped firing, they'd have run right over the top of us. And I told him, man, come on, we got to go. I can't ask you to stay here. He said, you didn't ask me to stay. I told you I'm staying here. Get the guys out of here. I said, man, come on, I'm sure we can make it, but we got to go. He said, Sarge, get him out. We got to go. You got to go. I turned around and left, and then we could hear his machine gun just a blaring, and all of a sudden it stopped. He always carried a .38 revolver. He wasn't supposed to have it, but he had one. And you could tell the difference in the sound of a bullet, and he heard that thing fire 6 times, and I knew he was dead. When they recovered his body, he was credited with over 70 kills right there at his position. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. He was also awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor.
John 15:13 says, greater love hath no man than to lay his life down for others. And in a time of war, you experience that in a way that very few of us can relate to, but it's a picture of Christ laying down his physical body for us. So you got your crew. and you're heading back, and you got to go through the enemy again.
And I told the guys, I said, we're going to catch up to some Vietnamese up here. I said, when we get to them, and you know, how I knew this, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. I mean, it's not in a book. You're going to come up to some enemy and just walk through them and be real nice, and they'll let you go through. It doesn't work that way. And how I knew, I'll never know. One day I will. But, and they looked, I said, this guys, just stay close to me. And we started going through, here they are. All of a sudden, there's 30, 40, 50 guys there, and we're walking around them. And not one time did anyone ever make an effort or an indication that they saw us or that we were there. And the guys are looking at me, and I just motioned, come on, come on. We got past them because they're taking their time. They're looking for someone to shoot. But we're on a mission. We're getting out of there. Finally got up to where the lieutenant was, but as we're going up, we're running across several of our wounded. I got the guys up to where the second lieutenant was, and I told my fire team leader, take the guys on up into the perimeter. I'll be up as soon as I can. I went to the lieutenant, told him, we've got several wounded down there. We've got a lot of wounded down there. If we can get them up, if we can get them moving, if we can get them walking, we can save them. His comment was, our orders were to leave the wounded, get in and form a perimeter. I said, sir, we can't leave them down there. I turned around, started down the hill.
Again?
Again. He says, Sarge, if you take another step, I'll have you court-martialed. I said, sir, you got me on one. If you can get me twice, you have at it. Kept on going. And he said to me, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Oh, he's getting shorter.
Yeah, well, he knows time is getting shorter. And two of his own guys jumped up and followed me. I didn't ask him, he didn't tell him. But as we're going down there, I told him, guys, anybody that's not shot in the legs, anybody that can walk, help them up. You can't bandage anybody, you can't take care of wounds, you can't carry anyone. They have to be able to walk. And so we picked guys up. We probably, I would say, 30, 40 guys we picked up. And finally, I could see the Vietnamese coming up the hill, and I said, guys, we got to go now. And as I did that, just as I turned and everybody started going uphill and laying there on the ground in front of me, and my mistake was I made eye contact. There's a GI on the ground, and he'd been shot in the neck. I can see the blood pumping through his arteries. He'd been shot in the lungs, his ribs, because his lung was sticking out like a big balloon. And he says to me, Sarge, don't leave me. Hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life. I've lived that thing now for 44 years, and I've never come up with an answer on what I should have done. We're running out of time, but I got to tell you.
You think about it every day?
Every day, every day. First thing every morning when I wake up, the first thing I see is this guy telling me, don't leave me. When we finally got back up into our perimeter, that night, well, actually, we got through the night. The next night, they had gotten all our wounded around this huge tree. And we called in an airstrike. We needed help. We needed resupplied. And they, as I found out 25 years later, a Marine pilot had heard this call, our distress call, and he dropped. He said he had two 500-pound bombs left on his load, said he would drop them where we wanted them. And I don't know if we give him the wrong coordinates or if he misunderstood. It doesn't make any difference. Those first two bombs hit that tree where all of us wounded were. The guy on my right, it took off both his arms. The guy on my left, it severed him in two at the waist. I lay shoulder to shoulder between them, never touched me. When that bomb went off, those bombs went off, it killed Father Waters. And I couldn't make any sense. I became angry with God. When I found I cursed him. I told him, you know, if this is the kind of God you are, I don't want to hear from you. Just leave me alone. Don't send anybody. Don't come to me. Just leave me alone. Just let me die. I sit down, and this voice says to me, Ed, And I knew who it was. And if I had have seen him, I'd have shot him. I swear, I was that angry. I was just...
Just got to ask, same voice as the foxhole?
Same voice, same voice. And finally he said, Ed, I'm going to tell you why I took Father Waters. I said, okay, make some sense of that to me, how you could take somebody that was doing nothing but good and leave somebody like me who's done nothing right in his life. Make some sense of that to me. He said, Father Waters has done on this earth what I sent him to do. He said, when you've done what I've sent you to do, I'll take you home too. My life changed, boom, right there. You know, I knew, first thing I knew was I was going to make it out of there. There's nothing these guys could do to me, because God said he was going to take me home. I was going to be okay. And I've searched all this time now, since 1967. Evidently, I haven't done what I'm supposed to do yet, because I'm still here.
Well, maybe you're doing it tonight, I can tell you that. But you're going to wake up in the morning, I'm sure. You have a purpose. You would say that moment was your salvation moment, right?
Absolutely.
John 5, Jesus says, when you fully surrender to me, when you believe in me, fully surrender is what that means, you cross from death to life.
I was waking up every day thinking, I wonder if this is the day I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And, you know, I'd look up, try to figure out, is this it? Is this it? And finally, one day, middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm laying in bed, and I hear somebody say, Ed, different voice, God's busy tonight. and I woke up and sat up, and I'm looking around and thinking, what? And this voice says, until you've done what God has sent you to do, there's a lot of other things that need to be done.
Well, Ed, it makes me think of Micah 6:8, and the Bible says, what does the Lord require of you? What's he want you to do? But to do justly, do justice, or do justly, love, mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And let me tell you something, you're doing that. I can't thank you enough for being with us. Can we thank you?